answer this.
So let me ask you a question. What if I told you that somewhere in your campus, probably sitting in a rack in some back room, is a single Ethernet handoff that's got potential to transform how your entire organization interacts with emergency services? And right now, you're probably using it like a phone line. Yeah, we need to talk about that. And that's what's coming up next on TiPS Today in Public Safety.
Welcome to TiPS Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Here's your host, Fletch, with today's tips.
Welcome to TiPS Today in Public Safety. This is Fletch. I'm a NENA certified ENP, and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I bring you the latest, most informative, and sometimes controversial takes on emergency communications. Today, we're continuing our series on the fictitious Ivy League University, and we're zooming in on something that most people walk right past: the NG911 Ethernet connection sitting in the Demarc. Now, if you're like some campuses, you know that it's there. You know the state delivered it, and you probably think, well, great, that's our connection to 911. And technically, you're right. But practically, you're probably missing about 90% of what that connection can actually do. It's not just a phone line anymore. Let's start here. You see, that Demarc connection is tied to the Emergency Services IP network, or EZNet. That's not legacy 911. That's just not voice routing. It's an IP-based, standards-driven, multimedia-capable network. And yet, most deployments treat it like just another voice trunk. Maybe one that'll handle text to 911. And that's about it. But here's the shift. You didn't get a dial tone, you got a data pipeline. And we're barely using it. What that port can actually carry. Here's where we get to talk about capability and not just theory. That NG911 connection can support things like voice. Yeah, that's still important. But also real-time text, video streams, images, sensor data, location objects, and incident-related metadata. And not just raw data, but structured, standards-based data that can be directly ingested into the ECC systems. So just stop for a second and think about what that means for our campus. Camera feeds that are tied to an incident, access control events showing who badged in, environmental sensors that are confirming conditions, and verified location data with floor-level accuracy. And the cool part, all of that is delivered with the call, not after it. The architecture gap. So if this capability is actually there, why isn't everyone doing this? Well, what it comes down to is that there's a missing layer. And this is where things start to get real. Most campuses have things like UCaaS platforms, IoT devices, security systems, and mobile apps. But what they don't have is a normalization and orchestration layer. Something that can validate data, correlate the inputs, package all that information, and then deliver it in NG911 compliant formats. And without that layer, you've got data everywhere, but nothing can be trusted enough to send to 911. From connection to integration. This is where we talk about the mindset shift. Right now, in a campus, you call 911, but the data stays inside the campus systems. But in a future state, campuses are integrated with NG911, and the data can flow intelligently into the ECC. That means you've got pre-validated information, significantly reduced interrogation time to get that data, and all that allows for a faster, more accurate dispatch. And here's the kicker. The PSAP doesn't need more calls. What it needs is better data. And this is how you deliver it. The risk of doing nothing. So let's flip the situation a bit. What'll happen if you don't evolve? Well, what you're going to end up with is an increase in data inside your campus. Zero ability to share it effectively, which is going to grow the gap between what you know and what 911 sees. And that gap is where the delays live. And that's where mistakes happen. And ultimately, that's where outcomes change significantly. reality check. You may already have the connection. You probably already have most of the data. But what you don't have is the architecture to bring them together. And that's just an environment waiting to fail. The bottom line, that NG911 Demarc is not just a network handoff. It's your gateway to the emergency services ecosystem. If you treat it like a phone line, you're going to stay stuck in the past. Treat it like the data exchange that it is, and you'll be able to start changing outcomes for the better. And that's where you need a plan. That wraps up today's episode of TiPS Today in Public Safety. Stay with us on this 7-part series as we look at how a next-gen 911 deployment in a large Ivy League campus can improve outcomes and save lives. Thanks so much for listening. For more updates and insights, remember to follow me on social media at Fletch911. And you can visit 911tips.com, where you'll find a complete archive of my previous episodes. My blogs are available online at Fletch.tv, and as always, my professional website is at Fletch911.com. Stay safe, thanks so much for listening, and if you're in public safety, thanks for what you do every single day. We'll see you next time. Take care.
You've been listening to TiPS Today in Public Safety, your go-to podcast for today's breaking stories and public safety news. Hosted by Fletch and available every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Catch past episodes on 911tips.com. Be sure to like and subscribe, and remember to join us each week for the latest on NG911. I am Spider Harrison, the official 911 voiceover dude. Catch me on Sirius XM on various channels, including 90s on 9, the 10 spot, and on the Weekend Countdown on Hits 1. Or don't regret it for the rest of your life. Either way, I'm good.